poles, which can be seen in an ongoing Earth wobble. This, in effect, is giving rise to ever greater Earth changes. To understand how much Earth wobble has progressed in recent years, we need to look at the horizons of the Earth as a giant clock. So if you look directly due north, that would be 12 o'clock, east would be 3, west would be 9, and south would be 6. Before 2000, the sun rose at the 4 o'clock position and set at the 8 o'clock position. Starting in 2005, the sun rose at the 3 position and set at the 9 position. The sunrise-sunset positions progressed still further north until in 2014 the sunrise position was at 1:30 and the sunset position was at 10:30. In 2015, the summer sunset positions dropped back just a bit. Coincidentally, the position of the sun at high noon at the summer solstice, which is June 21st, also changed. The sun at high noon on the summer solstice used to be in central Mexico. In 2005, it crept north until it was in central United States. By 2014, it had reached the U.S.-Canadian border. That's about a 2,000-mile stretch. In 2015, it dropped further south again. As of 2016, the sun's position was at around 41 degrees north latitude. Now, this position could change yet again. All this abnormal sunrise, sunset, and high noon positions are due to the Earth wobble and a shifting of the geophysical poles. Now, the big event, the flip of the poles at the tipping point, is yet to happen. As this phenomenon increases steadily as the NEMESIS Nibiru system advances on our location, Earth changes will increase and intensify dramatically. Researchers predict that Planet X, Nibiru, comes directly between the Sun and the Earth. It will position itself right on the ecliptic and will therefore cause a great solar eclipse. Here are some important questions that require our attention if we are to fully understand this planetary system. Is Planet X, Nibiru, Planet 9, ready to show itself in 2017? And if so, what will it bring with it? Are Nemesis and Nibiru hiding behind the sun? Will Planet X bring a pole shift? With so many people wondering about other world affairs and not looking to the sky, could Planet X already be showing itself? In January 2015, Bob Fletcher predicted that martial law would be invoked in the U.S. within 6 months of the worldwide naked eye observations of objects in the Planet X system. NASA, the Pentagon, and the CIA are knowledgeable of the approaching rogue planet. The Vatican has also been briefed, but the public is being obviously misinformed about the approaching apocalypse. What the public has not been told is that the decade-long litany of global geological and meteorological calamities is caused by Planet X-provoked solar excitations. Before leaving office, President Obama gave a speech on global warming and signed an executive order to prepare for space weather events. In his proclamation, he acknowledged the real possibility of an end-of-life as we know it event taking shape on the planet. Again, we must ask ourselves, why was this said, and what could be achieved by making such a statement? The evidence to support this is overwhelming. What's happening on Earth is an indicator of this. Dozens of volcanoes erupting at the same time. The number and intensity of earthquakes dramatically rising. The elite hurriedly constructing safety bunkers, while the rest of us are kept in the dark so as not to create pandemonium. Storm systems multiplying in type, intensity, and size. Giant sinkholes and cracks appearing in the Earth's crust. Heat waves that are stronger and lasting longer. Events are now in place that will pave the way for the great event to take place. Disasters will worsen as Planet X nears its gravitational loop-around rendezvous with our Sun. NASA's own documents named the massive object Planet X, even before it had been sighted by the infrared astronomical satellite. Astrologists, ex-government officials, political insiders are all saying the same thing. Something ominous is on its way. The world is sinking deeper into chaos. We do not have to be told this by the mainstream media. We can see it for ourselves. Moral degradation and corruption are leading to the collapse of society and civilization. The earth is primed for cleansing. This has happened before, and it is very close to happening again. The signs of its imminent approach can be seen everywhere. It can only be accomplished through the wrecking ball of civilization, the incoming Nibiru NEMESIS system. People everywhere are sensing something is about to happen, even if they can't quite grasp what it may be. NASA must sense that the public is increasingly aware that something other than global warming is behind the mysterious and sudden changes that are taking place here on Earth. Since they can no longer keep their secrets from being known by others, why not pass the responsibility of announcing its existence onto the public themselves? Let those in the public mainstream be the ones to locate its presence, and that way NASA can kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. What an ingenious way to announce its presence and not be held responsible for keeping it a secret. But there is still another more obvious problem that must be resolved. How do we tell the public that there is a new solar system with 7 orbiting bodies in our backyard without creating pandemonium? The answer is simple. Just tell them that it is 40 light years away from Earth. But how could this system be trillions of miles from Earth and still be seen by infrared cameras and webcams? That couldn't be possible unless, of course, the system is much closer than what we are being led to believe. As you're probably aware, over the last decade, there have been many end times predictions. The apocalypse, the return of Planet X, a nuclear holocaust, even an alien invasion. And to date, not one prediction has come to fruition. Most of us searching for the truth become disillusioned. We quit getting prepared due to pressure from others, including our own family. We get labeled as having what's been described as the Nibiru pandemic. If things are normal, which at times it seems to be from the outside, then why look for darkness in the midst of the light? It's often hard to understand why these emotions run strong in some people more than in others. The changes to our planet are very subtle and slow, and there are few red flags to raise the alarm bells all at once. The major problem that stands between reality and a false flag is the fake news that floods the web by those whose only purpose is to gain attention. These people are not helping expose the real truth. There are governments that are preparing for a major event, and it does not matter which event it may be. I have doubted myself at times, but then I go back to the basics and look at the increase in the activities that are going on around the world. The massive floods, the volcanic eruptions, the earthquakes, and what is happening in our universe and the planets that surround us. Some of you may follow those more famous so-called experts on Planet X, and after their predictions did not happen, then the doubt began to set in. To save face, these experts would reset the clock and the process would begin anew. Let me say that these experts need to be very careful when making such predictions. They are not helping anyone, and in fact, they are doing harm. That's the very reason I have avoided making any such predictions. There is no one on this planet, including myself, who has the keys to both time and space. That belongs in the hands of a far greater entity. Just for the record, I am not producing these videos for entertainment. I care about others, especially those who depend on my video content to help them in their preparations and for spiritual guidance. And I just hope that I can make people be aware of what's happening to our planet and keep an open mind on what is taking place in our solar system. Be sure to follow the latest updates on the Nibiru Planet X system on our Facebook page. And remember to keep looking to the sky.
Good evening and welcome back, it's Matt. Time is now 11:37 and it's the 11th of the 4th 2017. And again we can see an object on this Taj Mahal Mexico cam. And I just wanted you to see this, it's very important, because we have our sun's twin, the binary twin Nemesis that's on the horizon, always is on the horizon now, and we're seeing the huge reflections coming in. I'm going to zoom into this sun's twin. You can see this, can't you? Now this huge reflection there is behind that cloud, behind the haze, and it's been spotted a lot of times now. Lots of people are noticing the changes in the sky, and also as well the changes around the world as well. People are panicking. The government is panicking as well. The Koreans are setting off nuclear war weapons in the skies, and the governments are worried about this, and also people acting very strangely as well. There's a lot of chaos going on out there, and strange weather patterns as well. Lots of heavy floods, 6 months to 2 years of rainfall in one night. Some parts of the world, huge earthquakes are happening again. The Solomon Islands and other parts of the world as well. Chile, there's a large one. I mean, there's some crazy times ahead of us as well, and we are changing. Things are changing drastically every day. The whole world is going into a situation now of huge changes. We are shifting. The poles are shifting. Our sun, the soul, it has that object in front of it, the Solo Simulator. It really does. And these reflections are just not right anymore, are they? We've got other celestial bodies that are travelling with our sun, and also the cloaking technology they're using all the time. And NASA needs to be exposed now. They really do. The news media needs to tell us. As again though, we're finding out for ourselves. We're fending for ourselves. This is the only way we're going to get the truth out at the moment. And other people doing their channels are doing a grand, fantastic job. And it's only a short time away this event will happen. Again, early hours of this morning, about 2 AM, I overheard birds getting really agitated outside. There was hundreds of birds that were flying around, and they were sounding very stressed out. Now we do get this when we get a solar eclipse with the moon and the sun, but early hours of the morning I looked at the moon. It was ever so bright. It was far too bright. There is an object that's out there that's not just our sun, that's brightening up the skies as well. And we're just going to keep finding the truth and see what's going on. Here on this screen you can see where they do use that cloaking technology to the left and the right of when the sun rises, using that same dark cloud that you see in front of the sun all the time to cover objects that are hidden in plain sight from our eyes, the public. And we, the public, just want the truth with this. We're also seeing every day on a daily basis strange reflections up there in the skies as well. And you can see this chemtrail going through this strange pattern like a rainbow effect. We see this every day in these creamy, hazy chemtrails. We don't see our natural clouds much anymore, and other people are reporting this from all over the world. Nibiru, Helion, and also the brown dwarf star NEMESIS and the moons are real celestial objects on an ecliptic orbit, and they come round every 3,600 years. It's been documented. The Sumerians and also other civilizations, they have documented this from the past. Dr. Harrington sadly passed away because of this, and also Lloyd Pye and other true believers that have researched this right through to knowing that these celestial objects are coming and heading our way. Of all the changes around the world right now that you can see, all the changes that have been reported on news media right now, the weather patterns, the abrupt climate change, the strangeness of the climate, the volcanoes that are starting to erupt now, multiple earthquakes, everything is starting to change. The huge red reflections from the inner solar system now that's heading into our skies, we're seeing this red haze all the time, and these more multiple chemtrails that chemtrail in our skies all the time as well. It's huge evidence that we've got these huge bodies that are coming in now into our inner solar system. We was warned back in 1983, but the media slammed it down. They shut it down. NASA closed it down too. They don't want the mass panic. They want us to carry on right to the end. The tax, the payers' money is so important to them. The banking system is very important to them. They are building these underground cities. We've all got to never forget about the past with these tablets that were produced many thousands of years ago. They knew and they had seen Nibiru. They knew their fate was coming. They could see it in the skies. They didn't have chemtrails, and their cities and towns are still proven to this date, but buried thousands of miles, and also some in Antarctica at 25 miles deep. Military and government are hiding the truth, and we really need to expose the government to show that they've been hiding the truth. Time is got to be now. We are natural human beings on this celestial body Earth, and we have the right to know what's going on, because our skies are showing true evidence that they are pulling the wool over our eyes all the time. And the Sumerians, as I said, their tablets were destroyed, hidden from the public. So it's so important that we acknowledge the truth. Here's the size of the Earth, proportion of a coronal hole of the Sun. Now this is one of the smaller coronal holes, and look at the size of the Earth in this image. I mean, one of these huge CME blasts can easily wipe humanity out. Easily. And this is also why they're digging those, burying and also building those underground cities. So when one of these huge blasts happen, they seem to think that they will be saved. There might be a chance of surviving deep down there in the dark cities of underground bases government, organised evilness, as we have to fend for ourselves on top on our celestial body, the Earth. I mean, we have witnessed this, watching those channels as they've been closing the Walmarts down, heavily policed, heavily full of military, guarding them as well, as they're building them tunnels right through to the Walmarts. I mean, and they use high-speed rail trains as well, getting to and from them with food rations and things. And I mean, they're taking away our food, you know, they're taking away our Walmarts. They've been doing this under our noses for about 5 to 6 years now, and they're still carrying on doing this. And I just want to explain the truth, really. So I'm going to do a video again tomorrow. I did another video today, but the sound again was appalling. So I'm going to, hopefully this video is fixed now. So tomorrow I'm going to do another video. So please take care and please prepare for this. And I'll be back shortly.
The only difference is that in this photograph, it reveals coordinates on the bottom. This photograph was taken off of a gentleman's YouTube video, which was later removed thus after. The coordinates are, can't really come in on the camera that well, but 5 hours, 33 minutes, 27 seconds, -6, 10 degrees, 56. Now, I thought to myself, if I were to take these same coordinates and plug them into Google Earth Sky, if I may possibly get the same image, seeing how that these images were taken in 2007, around that time period, right after the South Pole Telescope was first opened, and Google Earth Sky originated in 2007, I thought there might be some possible similarities in the pictures. So let me just open up Google Earth here and I'll show you what I found. Now if we just go to View, Explore, and switch to Sky. Now I took the same coordinates, which I will show you here. 5 hours, 53 minutes, 27 seconds, -6, 10, 58. Now I will take those coordinates, zoom out here, and let's begin the search. And I think you'll be pretty amazed at what you find. Looks there that we went into a big dark hole. Now, as you can see, there's no stars around or anything in this image. But if we slowly back out, you'll notice that in this exact image, there was just a cropped out circle, square, of absolutely nothing. This is the only image found in the Google Earth Sky where it is completely blacked out. Now, if you zoom in really close, there's proof here that this is not just a false image. You see here this background star? The star is cut directly in half. And up here there's a little information tab, and when you click on it, what comes up, I'm not sure if you can see that, but all it says is this. I don't know what this means. I clicked on it, but it went to a dead link. Well folks, there you have it. There's more proof that Nibiru possibly does exist, and there's a big cover-up right now. And what worries me even more is the fact that someone went to the great extent of blocking out this image and for the public to see what is possibly imminently coming. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?
Now, we're going to start today by talking about the days of Noah. Jesus, talking to his disciples, and it's recorded in Matthew 24, said, But as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. In other words, as it was, and which then prompts us to go back and look at the days of Noah and find out how they really were. So let's talk about that for a little bit. We have the creation of man. We have the antediluvian civilization. And I think more and more is being learned about that time period. And you've done considerable research yourself. So let's talk about what interests you about the days of Noah.
Well, Matthew refers to the days of Noah in a generic sense. I believe there's quite a number of aspects to the days of Noah. What interested me initially was the scientific approach. What caused the flood? What does the Bible say what happened to the earth before and after the flood? That gives us clues as to what happened. Is there evidence today that supports the theory as to what caused the flood? And is there any prophecies as to whether that event will reoccur in the future? Because if the phrase, as in the days of Noah, is true, very much all aspects of that time will be replicated in the future. And what I'm referring to specifically is we have come to the conclusion that part of one of these events is a pole shift that happened at that time, which was an instrumental part of the flood, which we feel the Bible supports it, and it also talks about an upcoming pole shift in the near future.
In other words, a pole shift then, which resulted in the flood. Mm-hmm. There will be another pole shift in the future as described in Revelation.
Right.
But it will have a different effect than the one in the days of Noah. In fact, the Lord told Noah that he would never again destroy the world by flood, or by, I guess, totally covering it in water. But on the other hand, we read a lot of prophecy in Isaiah and other places that suggest a pole shift. I've got my Bible open here to Isaiah 24:20. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard. Well, that's a graphic description of something wobbling. And for something the size of the earth to wobble, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Tell us, what you see when you look at Scripture, both in Genesis and in Revelation.
Right, absolutely. The first thing is what you described. The type of pole shift we're talking about is not a magnetic pole shift, which scientists are saying the Earth flips on its north and south pole magnetic axis frequently. In fact, we have a wandering north magnetic pole. It's somewhere in the Hudson Bay right now. We're not talking about that type of pole shift. We're talking about a geographic pole shift, one that is incredibly dangerous to the Earth. It actually shifts the entire planet, as you mentioned, Isaiah talking about the planet wobbling. So let's look at the days of Noah before the flood. We find that before the flood, there's a description in Genesis 2:6 that the whole earth was watered by a mist and that there was no rain. We know because of our axis shift today at 23.5 degrees, we have weather patterns, cyclones, tornadoes, we have rain all over the planet at any given time, lightning storms. They had none of this before the days of Noah. No rain. And it says specifically no rain fell on the earth, which means the whole earth was truly watered by a mist. The only way that could happen is if the axis of the earth was parallel to the axis of the sun. So as it spun on its axis in its rotation around the sun, it became a temperate climate. From North Pole to South Pole, the entire planet was basically a paradise, a garden. There was no polar caps at that time. We also see another clue as to the pole shift is that when the flood came, Genesis tells us that the fountains of the deep were broken up. There is, of course, references to the firmament in the sky, so there is possibly moisture in the air or a canopy. There is a canopy theory, but we believe that the scriptures, even though that may have fallen, if there was a canopy, the majority of the water came from the oceans. Now, if you have a pole shift and physically, geographically shift the poles of the Earth, grab the Earth, shift it, it would not only wobble but then stabilize at its current axis orientation of 23.5 degrees, but in the process, the centripetal force would slosh the water from the oceans around the planet. That there's more than enough water to cover every mountain on the planet. Now we look at Genesis and we see the effects of the planet after Noah. Mm-hmm. And we are clearly being told there is a rainbow in the sky, a rainbow that has never been seen before because there's a lot of moisture in the air. This was God's covenant to Noah that he would never destroy the earth again by a flood. Could he? Yes. The oceans are still there. He could, but he promises he won't. In fact, later on in the scriptures, we learn that he says that the next time he comes, he will destroy the world by fire. During the days of Noah, it was very clear what type of pole shift we are talking about, a geographic pole shift, where the entire planet actually moves 23.5 degrees. Or the whole planet moves, in this particular case, it was 23.5 degrees. Now, there is a much, much, much more devastating type of pole shift that has never happened on the planet. It is a crustal pole shift. It is one where the axis of the Earth continues to spin the way it has been, but the entire outside crust of the planet suddenly shifts around the spinning axis. Mm-hmm. Now, remember when I said that the equator, wherever the equator is around the spinning axis, is about 20 kilometers wider? Well, as the crust shifts over this, the land literally has to rip apart in excess of 20 kilometers as it moves across the new equator and collapse back over. So it literally is going to rip apart most of the planet while this is happening. Let me read to you why I believe that the upcoming event is a crustal pole shift. Let me read to you out of Revelation 6:14 the actual description of this event. This is the opening of the sixth seal. And the heavens departed as a scroll when it was rolled together, and every mountain and every island were moved out of their place. What it's talking about is, think of just a quick analogy. Islands and mountains as carrots. They're on the surface, but their base goes far underground. And if you chop off every island and every mountain, if you take this verse literally, everyone on the planet, and everyone is moved simultaneously out of its place, you have a crustal pole shift. The more liquid center of the earth, the mantle, is stationary, and the crust is being ripped away from the center mantle. This type of pole shift would create lateral forces all over the planet, collapsing buildings, collapsing infrastructures, causing tsunamis, generating an EMP pulse from the center of the earth, basically disrupting all of our communication satellites. GPS would be down, all of our power grids would disappear. There would be massive high winds and an exponential increase in earthquakes all around the planet.
And islands being moved out of their places, that's not as easy as it sounds, because if, for example, the Hawaiian Islands are above the sea, but they widen out under the water, and they're on a very firm base. Let's put it this way, they have a firm foundation. But the Bible says islands like that are going to be ripped away, literally removed from their connection.
In fact, the Old Testament refers to this as well, like you mentioned, Isaiah. Isaiah 13:13 says that the earth will be moved out of her place, meaning it won't even be in the same orbit. Whatever causes this pole shift, this crustal mantle pole shift, is also going to alter the orbit of the earth. Isaiah 24, the earth will reel to and fro as a drunkard. It won't even have cycles anymore. If you were alive at that moment and you looked up in the sky, the sun is moving in this direction for a few hours, it slowly diverts and moves into a different direction. So this would be a horrible time. As far as anybody's concerned, it's the end of the world.
In 1958, Charles Hapgood suggested in his book, The Earth's Shifting Crust, that the Earth's crust had undergone repeated displacements and that the geological concepts of continental drift and seafloor spreading owed their secondary livelihoods to the primary nature of crustal shift. According to Hapgood, crustal shift was made possible by a layer of liquid rock situated about 100 miles beneath the surface of the planet. A pole shift would thus displace the Earth's crust in around the inner mantle, resulting in crustal rocks being exposed to magnetic fields of a different direction. An Earth crust displacement, as the words suggest, is a movement of the entire outer shell of the Earth over its inner layers. If you remove the peel from an orange and then reattach it to the fruit, you can visualize the possibility of the peel moving over the inner layers. The Earth's crust, according to Charles Hapgood, can likewise change its position over the inner layers. When it does, the globe experiences climatic change. The climactic zones, polar, temperate, and tropical, remain the same because the sun still shines on the Earth from the same angle in the sky. From the perspective of people on Earth at the time, it appears as the sky is falling. In reality, it is the Earth's crust shifting to another location. Some land moves toward the tropics, others shifts with the same movement toward the poles, yet others may escape such great changes in latitude. The consequence of such a movement of the entire outer shell of the Earth is catastrophic. Throughout the world, massive earthquakes shake the land and enormous tidal waves crash into and over the continental shelf. As the old ice caps leave the polar zones, they melt, raising the ocean level higher and higher.
After publishing more than 70 videos on this subject, I thought that maybe it would be appropriate to provide my reasons why Nibiru, Planet X, is real, and how NASA has become an unwilling accomplice in verifying its existence. I'll start with the first one that comes to mind, and probably the most compelling argument for the existence of Planet X. You have heard me talk about this before, but for the sake of those who may be novice or inexperienced regarding this subject, let's be mindful of what has already been proven to be true. NASA announced to the world in 1983 that Planet X was on the fringes of our solar system. They said it was virtually knocking at our door. The story was covered on the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times, two of the most prestigious newspapers in the world. Soon afterwards, then-President Ronald Reagan made the declaration part of the United States national security mandate, which in political terms means he made it illegal for astronomers, scientists, government agencies, and institutions of learning from speaking publicly about this discovery. He forced this mandate because he was convinced that the public would panic if they understood that a large planetary body was entering our solar system that had the potential to cause global cataclysms on an epic scale. He convinced other nations to follow suit, and it then became top secret information, where only bits and pieces were allowed to leak out to the public. There are many stories from ancient civilizations the world over that describe a large planetary body that returns to our solar system periodically, causing destruction in the form of superfloods, earthquakes, and volcanic activity. If you take the writings of the Sumerian world, considered the cradle of civilization, and compared them to the stories spoken by the Aborigines of Australia and the teachings of Holy Scripture with respect to wormwood, you will discover that each of these stories has a similarity that cannot be considered a coincidence. And here's why. The Sumerians were the people of Babylonia who actually named this planet Nibiru, or Planet of the Crossing, and did this in their own language. One of the reasons why this is so convincing is that the Sumerians actually discovered Pluto and included it in their model of our solar system, which is in direct contradiction to the fact that our own astronomers didn't announce the discovery of Pluto until 1930. If you have done any research, you may know why public and private astronomers alike are searching the sky for the elusive planet. In 1894, Percival Lowell, a wealthy American businessman, financed the building of the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. Part of the Lowell Observatory's original mandate was to specifically look for the mysterious planet, thus establishing profound proof that America knew of its existence over 100 years ago. They searched the skies for over 30 years and thought they had found it in 1930, but it turned out to be what we call Pluto, and determined it wasn't large enough to be Planet X. This compelling piece of evidence is not widely known or talked about, but shows that certain groups within American society knew of this planet's existence and its potential for devastation. Although rarely talked about, the phenomenon of an increase in the Earth's wobble observed by the public worldwide is included in the top 5 reasons for its numbers of observations made by the public. Here's an important observation that has been reported by farmers around the world, who are consistently viewing the sky as part of their livelihood as the world's food producers. Since the year 2005, they have been noticing how the sun and the moon have been rising and setting in abnormal positions. Now, there can be no mistake about this, since their observations have been corroborated by the Inuit elders, the Eskimo civilization of the Arctic frontier. So here's what we know about the movement of Nibiru Planet X. It is an unnatural orbit. It does not reside on the galactic plane where all other normal planets reside. It enters our solar system from the galactic south. That is exactly why this system can be seen more easily from the southern hemisphere. And this is why large astronomical observatories have been built in this part of the world. There is sufficient evidence of an abnormal Earth wobble. They include unusual changes in the jet stream resulting in extreme weather-related events, an increase in tectonic stress, an increase in volcanic eruptions, and the melting of the polar ice caps, which have been thoroughly documented by leading scientists and geologists. Irrefutable photos and videos of second sun sightings the world over is another evidential link that cannot be ignored. Some will say every one of these images are indicative of lens flares, unless they can be proven without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, of course, we live in a digital age of computer graphics and technology. Some can be easily faked or misidentified as lens flares or sundogs, dust smudges, or some natural phenomenon. But many are not, and those that are not fake are usually the ones that are subsequently removed. Why would you censor them if they were in fact fakes? The censorship of Planet X information is very compelling. But if something is real and is then deleted, it can no longer be used as evidence because it will be inaccessible to the public. Since the mid to late 1970s. I talked in length about this in my previous video, which coincidentally sparked a considerable amount of interest across social media and in the channel comments section of the video description. The preparations that are ongoing include, but are not necessarily limited to, underground sanctuaries and military installations. Stockpiling of supplies, which include food, water, seeds, weapons, ammunition, gasoline, and other pertinent necessities for survival. FEMA has constructed ready-made camps in various locations in the United States, away from coastlines. The camps are sitting there empty, but why exactly were they built? For what purpose? In China, they have constructed ghost cities within their vast interior, well away from coastal areas, populated by rural residents at the insistence of the Chinese military. The construction of camps can be interpreted as meaning one thing. They are anticipating the destruction or the elimination of large populations of their own citizens. One can determine that its purpose is to keep the impending cataclysms a secret for as long as possible. Unexplainable phenomena should be enough to convince even the most die-hard naysayer that our planet is changing exponentially. Since the beginning of the millennium, leading up to the present time, there has been a considerable increase in all of the events shown here. All of these events have one common denominator, the increase in the Earth's wobble, which can only be caused by another large magnetic influence in our solar system. But remember this one important reality. These events can be easily explained away and censored by the mainstream media and the powerful elite. The concerns of the public can be quickly quelled just by saying that these are natural events or events caused by human negligence. This then allows those in power to keep the public second-guessing, keeping them from connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture. This is where you, as a sky watcher, should use common sense and draw your own conclusions that not all of these events can be just a coincidence. Is the misrepresentation or the underreporting of large earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on a global scale. In 2003, the United States Geological Society lowered the earthquake rating system by 1 point, thus allowing them to convince the public that large earthquakes were not on the rise. This shows the USGS duplicity in the matter, and people may have noticed that almost every major earthquake in the last 10 years is immediately downgraded by this institution. This certainly shows a pattern of deceit if you follow this with any sense of concern. Volcanic eruptions are more difficult to determine, but here is something quite striking. It is estimated that there are more than 3 million fissures, volcanoes, and magma flows that litter the ocean floors worldwide, with around 3,000 on the surface. One major volcanic eruption can pour more carbon dioxide and other poisonous gas and pollution into our atmosphere in one day than all of the man-made pollution we have released into the atmosphere in the last 100 years. Consider how this would affect the environment when multiple volcanoes are erupting worldwide at the same time, and you have a recipe for disaster that could well lead to a mass extinction level event. Here is something very interesting. Many believe the common elenin was so named as a warning to global elitists that Nibiru had arrived in our solar system. It's believed to be an acronym for Extinction Level Event. Nibiru is near. This reason I have saved for last. The overwhelming so-called scientific evidence that polar shifts have happened in the Earth's past. From a geological standpoint, the evidence is certainly overwhelming and has been confirmed many times over, even though it has not been widely recognized in the public perspective, even though dozens of research papers and studies show this to be true. What is suspect in their findings is the reason given for these past shifts, which has nothing to do with a rogue planet or a system of planets. Here is something I want you to know when you consider each of these findings by leading scientists. Many of them are paid and supported by government grants to publish conclusions on what the government wants you to know. Therefore, the evidence is shaped to fit the theory or the idea. The same could be said of astronomers. Many of them either work for NASA or for agencies tied to government research institutions. Because of this, they can be held to the national security mandate that was implemented by President Reagan in the early 1980s. So think about that the next time you ask why so many astronomers haven't said anything about Planet X. If your livelihood is linked to an agency that wants information kept from the public, you will lie, you will falsify documents, and you will create new theories to back their agenda. I could list more reasons for the existence of Planet X, as it is all too real for me, but I want you to do some of your own research. Search the internet. Read up on book publications dating back 100 years. Or if you prefer not to read, check out the many videos and movies and documentaries on this subject. It is our best means for seeking the truth. If Planet X is an elaborate hoax designed to spread fear throughout the world, then it has to be considered as the greatest of all. I've been accused of being a fearmonger just because of what I believe in and because of my sincere desire to warn others. And that is okay. I can handle that. You see, it has to do with a more noble cause. It is a part of our spiritual orientation and development. This is the moment in our existence in which we determine whether we live to serve others or to serve ourselves. It is a matter of choice. Some of you have already seen what is coming, either through your visions and dreams of its reality, or through your diligent observations of the sky. Through your own intuition coupled with spiritual guidance, you have come to know and understand these things. Not all of us are blessed to see its existence in its physical state. And yet, because of humanity's propensity not to believe anything that they cannot see with their own eyes, then many will have a difficult time in believing what the rest of us know to be true. Even so, we shouldn't stop recognizing how all of this is affecting the earth. Many are under the false assumption that something this big or this important just couldn't be kept from the public, and that out of the goodness of their hearts, the governments would inform their citizens if this were true. But the reality is they cannot inform you, and they will never inform you. How can you possibly tell 7 billion people that something is coming that the world cannot control? The global elite will seek shelter in their underground cities, but even these places will crumble by the magnitude of what is upon us. Current research and data now suggests that we are living in a time of global flooding and devastating changes thrust upon the earth by powerful forces unknown to this generation. Understanding my reasons for the existence of a Planet X or a NEMESIS system may in the long run